Good morning. I now call to order this August 18, 2021 Land Use Public Hearing. Before we begin, I would like all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Today, we will consider ZDO-280, a proposed legislative text amendment to the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan and Zone Development Ordinance that is intended to make relatively minor changes to the county's land use regulations that are necessary to comply with the new state and federal mandates, clarifying existing language, correct errors, and adopt optional provisions that require only minimal staff analysis. The hearing on ZDO-280 will proceed as follows. Number one, we will first hear a presentation from Senior Planner Glen Hamburg. Next, I will open the public hearing for testimony, beginning with the public officials who will have 5 minutes each. Third, then representatives from the recognized community planning organizations and agencies will have 3 minutes each. Finally, others wishing to testify will have 3 minutes each. And 5, the board will then deliberate and either render a decision today or set a time to make a decision at a later date. Assisting us in the hearing today is our clerk, Shannon Bays, Senior Planner Glen Hamburg, Planning Director Jennifer Hughes from the Planning and Zoning Division, and Assistant County Counsel Nate Boderman. Today, we are holding this land use hearing in person as well as virtually. If you've joined us on the Zoom app for this meeting and you're interested in providing public comment, we will prompt you regarding how to do that when the time is right. The Zoom link and instruction to participate via Zoom are located at www.clackamas.us/meetings/bcc/landuse. You will have the option of providing your comments to us live during the public comment portion of this meeting. Be sure to include your name and area where you live. For those attending in person, please fill out a card and give it to Shannon right over here, and you will be called to provide your testimony at the appropriate time. We will now begin the hearing with the planning staff's presentation of the report and recommendation. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commission. I'm Glen Hamburg, Senior Planner in the Planning and Zoning Division, and I'll be giving a brief description of what is in this proposed package of amendments and what is staff's recommendation. Shannon, next slide, please. First off, what's in your packets is a written report from staff about the proposal and the recommendation, as well as a copy of this PowerPoint. There's also a copy of the staff report that was given to the Planning Commission and draft copies of their meeting minutes from their public hearing on this package. Perhaps most importantly is Attachment A, which is the set of amendments themselves, about 500 pages, and summaries of each of those amendments. And then finally, there's a set of the comment exhibits, all of the comments that we've gotten. Here it says 122 comments. Well, since this packet was put together, we've had 4 more, and I hope that those were provided. They're on the medical services topic that we'll discuss this morning. Next slide, please. Why are we doing this package? Well, it's in our adopted long-range planning work program to do a package of essentially good governance amendments every year. They are intended to be minor amendments, so not necessarily big projects. It's also intended to respond to certain time-sensitive issues, perhaps board priorities or certain new mandates that might come up. To be sure, there's no new mandates that we're addressing with these amendments in this package. They are also intended to have minimal staff analysis, but I want to stress that that doesn't necessarily mean that what we're proposing isn't significant or important for the county. Indeed, some of the issues that we're tackling here are issues that members of the public and in the county have really asked us to address. They just don't require necessarily a lot of analysis. Next slide, please. So these issues have been discussed before, both with the board and the Planning Commission and other venues. We had a study session back in April to discuss the issues and get some feedback from the Planning Commission. We did that with the board as well back in May, where we got some feedback on exactly what to propose in this package and how. And we've taken those recommendations and incorporated them into the amendments. We had a formal public hearing with the Planning Commission on this package back on July 26th. Next slide, please. The package addresses essentially 12 actions, and I'm just going to list them here. I've highlighted in red, though, issues that might be more significant because they've attracted the most comment or discussion. But if there's any of these other issues that you'd like to discuss this morning as well, I'll be happy to address them. The package would expressly allow outright the use of metal as an exterior building material in new institutional, commercial, industrial developments. As was recommended by the board, the amendments would allow for intentionally rusted metal, provided that they are treated to prevent future unintentional rust or corrosion, and that any metal that is not intentionally rusted or corroded is coated so that it does not rust or corrode. The package of amendments would repeal some of the county's own restrictions on property line adjustments in what are the natural resource zones. These are farmlands and forest lands of the county. Right now, the county, by its own choice, limits how much property can be transferred between property owners in these zones. The county says you can't transfer more than 5% of a property's existing size, even though the state doesn't allow that. The county also has another limitation that says once you reduce the size of your property in one of these zones by one time, you can't do it again. Staff are proposing to repeal those restrictions and only have the limitations on property line adjustments that are required under state law. This would give more flexibility to property owners. The package of amendments would also expressly allow drive-through signs for commercial businesses subject to certain standards. It would extend the pre-application conference validity period from 1 year to 2 years. It would create a pathway for approval of government offices through a conditional use permit process in urban residential zones, similar to how we already allow them in other zones of the county. This would essentially allow for the possibility for a standalone or co-located government office in urban residential zones. It would still require a public hearing and consideration of land use impacts. The next issue that it addresses is healthcare services that are accessory to places of worship. I'll say more about that here shortly. Next slide, please. The package would also address the implementation period for approved hospitals, public facilities, and other governmental uses, and I'll describe that here more shortly. The package would clarify certain processes and requirements related to time extensions and modifications. It would clarify that certain dog-related services like washing and grooming are already allowed uses in the zoning code. This is a good governance measure because unless we put it in the rules, people might not know that you're allowed to do it, so we're clarifying that. We're also incorporating into the zoning code or proposing to incorporate existing allowances under state law for the extension of sewer services and sewer service components outside of urban growth boundaries. We're not proposing to allow anything new, just repeat what's listed as allowed in another set of regulations. And then we're going to propose some other sort of minor or non-substantive changes, things like typos, corrections of errors, and updated lists. Next slide, please. So staff have pulled out two significant issues and thought we could discuss those in particular detail. The first significant issue is this issue related to healthcare services that are accessory to places of worship being things like churches and synagogues, etc. So the question that we are considering about this issue is as follows, and I'm just going to read it verbatim. Should healthcare services, including counseling, that occupy no more than 10% of the combined floor area of all of the structures that are associated with a place of worship on the same property and operated as a charitable organization that are a 501c3, be expressly listed in the zoning code as an allowed accessory use to a place of worship. The issue here is that the zoning code already allows certain accessory uses, uses accessory to an approved place of worship, but it's a non-exclusive list. And that non-exclusive list leaves some ambiguity of, well, what types of land uses might an approved place of worship actually be allowed to conduct? This proposed amendment in attachment A would simply clarify that a healthcare service that is limited in size, no more than 10% of the combined floor area and operated as a charitable endeavor, is an accessory use and therefore allowable. Some arguments on one side and the other. Well, on the one hand, doing this is going to provide some regulatory certainty. It will allow places of worship to know that as long as I'm operating within these limits, I get to do healthcare services. And this could be of particular benefit to, for example, the Borland Free Clinic at the Rolling Hills Community Church. These amendments would also help to demonstrate that the use is accessory and not, for example, its own standalone hospital that may or may not be allowed or allowable in certain zones today. And it's important to know that there is still the possibility that a place of worship could, under existing rules, seek approval for more floor area if, for example, they wanted to operate for 15 or 20% or more of the floor area of all of their structures. But this just makes it clear, which can save people money and worry and time, that as long as I'm operating within these minimal limits, it will be allowed. On the other hand, some planning commissioners have expressed that there should be no floor area limitation. Staff is recommending that there is, and that's what's included in attachment A. Next slide, please. The other significant issue is about the approval period for certain uses versus others. And here's the question before us. Should the implementation period for hospitals and public facilities approved as a conditional use be reduced from 10 years to 4 years, such that their implementation period is the same as that for all other conditional uses, including places of worship? The issue is that certain land uses that are approved as conditional uses, hospitals and public facilities, have 10 years to be implemented. But other land uses only get 4 years, things like places of worship. And this is a potential concern because it may be a violation of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. We may not want to give some groups more time to implement a land use decision while only giving places of worship a certain amount of time. RLUIPA, that federal law from 2000, says that we have to treat places of worship under the zoning code essentially the same as other uses, except when there's a compelling governmental interest to do otherwise. And staff has not necessarily found any compelling governmental interest to say that places of worship and other uses should only have 4 years when other uses get 10. Staff also finds that there's potential benefits in reducing the 10-year implementation period for these other uses, hospitals and public facilities, because rules change over time. And having some expiration time can allow them to need to follow any new rules that come into effect, for example, after the 4 years. Well, 4 years may not sound like a lot of time to implement, for example, an approval for a hospital or a school. Know that they would still have the opportunity to get a time extension for 2 more years, for a total of 6 years to implement it. On the other hand, the board may find that there is a compelling governmental interest in allowing some land uses to be implemented in 10, but places of worship and other land uses only 4. And the board has the option of, in order to address the RLUIPA concern, extending the approval period of places of worship to 10 years so that they're the same. But staff's recommendation is to reduce the implementation period for hospitals and public facilities to 4 years so that all uses are treated the same, that everybody gets 4 years to implement their approval with the opportunity for a 2-year time extension. And that's what's included in Attachment A. Next slide, please. So staff's recommendation is approval of the amendments in Attachment A. Staff finds that they would address the work program priorities that were set out for us. They would best reflect the prior BCC direction that was given to us in May. And staff finds that the amendments would meet all applicable approval criteria. So the requirements, for example, in statewide planning goals, state statute, our own comprehensive plan, et cetera. So that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to address any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for that, Glenn. Does commissioners have any comments or questions at this time?
Chair, I have one question.
Commissioner Scholl.
On Action 1, metal as a exterior building material, this says that it would be allowed for projects greater than 3 units, not allowed for like duplexes or triplexes, or single-family homes.
Right now, there's not necessarily any prohibition on the use of metal as an exterior building material for a single duplex or a single triplex. But right now, the zoning code does have some ambiguities of whether you can use metal if you're going to put 2 duplexes or 2 triplexes on the same property. We want to remove that ambiguity and say, even if you're doing 2 duplexes, 2 triplexes on the same property, you can also use metal as an exterior building material.
Okay, and what about single-family homes?
Right now, there's no prohibition on the use of metal for single-family homes, so these amendments don't address that.
Okay, good.
Good. Any other questions? We did get a lot of emails on this, and I think most of them are positive regarding different topics. Does any commissioner wish to make any more comments on this? I will now go to the public testimony part of this hearing. I don't see anybody in the room who wants to testify. Shannon, do we have anybody online?
Yes, we do, Commissioner.
Are there any public officials?
Not that I know of.
Okay, that's fine. And are there any CPOs or agencies on there that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Okay, well, go ahead and in your order. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Carlson, you're up. Please unmute yourself, state your name and residence, and you have 3 minutes.
You know, I might have joined this prematurely. I'm speaking for the Rolling Hills and the Borland Free Clinic portion, so if I need to wait till later, then I can do that.
Just so the folks, hey, Ted, just so the folks are listening, we're taking testimony on all of the amendments to this, so you can speak on any topic, any of the amendments in the packet that you would like. So go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Very good. Good morning. My name is Ted Carlson. I have lived in Lake Oswego and Clackamas County for the past 36 years and have attended Rolling Hills for the past 35. I'm involved in a number of volunteer programs and ministries here in Clackamas County in the greater Portland area. For the past year and a half, I have volunteered at Borland Free Clinic as a Spanish medical translator and as a member of the development committee. It's been a wonderful opportunity to see and be part of the team that provides high quality, compassionate medical care at no cost to our patients. There are 3 things that stand out to me about Borland Free Clinic. First, as a small but significant part of Rolling Hills, we are fulfilling our Christian responsibility to be the hands and feet of Jesus here in our community, our county, and our state. Second, we provide medical care to everyone that enters our doors, which makes our client base very diverse. I have a special heart for the Latino community. Our Spanish-speaking clientele continues to grow monthly and is roughly half of our client load now. Over the last few months, I have had clients from El Salvador, Venezuela, Chile, Guatemala, Cuba, Honduras, and of course, Mexico. They are wonderful people, working hard, caring for their families, looking to start over here in our community. Third, the more we do at Borland Free Clinic, the less our medical system here in Clackamas County has to cover. It's a win-win-win for our clients, our area hospitals, and for us. From my vantage point, it makes good sense to allow Rolling Hills and other churches in our county to provide medical care as a small part of our overall mission. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you, Ted. Next.
Next up is Fred Wilson. Fred, please unmute yourself, state your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you. Yes, my name is Fred Wilson. I'm with the Kellington Law Group. Our address is P.O. Box 159, Lake Oswego, Oregon 97034. And we represent the Rolling Hills Community Church. And we're going to have a lot of folks, I think, talk and tell you about exactly what the clinic does. So I'll leave that to them since I don't have a lot of time. But before I begin, we'd like to thank the chair and the board for all the work they've done on this. We realize we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the efforts of the board. So we have a very sincere thank you for all the work that you've done. It's very much appreciated. Also like to thank staff, especially Mr. Hamburg and Ms. Hughes, who have done a lot of work drafting these ordinances. I'm not sure everybody realizes how difficult it is to draft ordinances that cover every situation and occurrence. So we appreciate all that they've done as well. Since I don't have a lot of time, the amendments were designed to allow charitable health services, medical ministry as an accessory use. There's really 2 parts to something being an accessory use. It has to be incidental and subordinate. Incidental basically just means that there's a connection between the primary use and accessory use. I don't think there's a whole lot of doubt that in this case that healing the sick is, since the primary use is a church, that's a very Christian thing to do, that there is a connection there so that it would be an incidental use. And the part of the proposed amendments that talk about being a nonprofit and being charitable healthcare service, I think satisfies that part. The second part is being subordinate, which basically just means secondary to the primary use. And that was what the 10% floor area requirement was designed to do. There's not really a problem with Rolling Hills because they're such a large church. This is such a minor part of what they do. It's only about between 1% and 2% of their floor area. So that wouldn't be a problem. But the Planning Commission seemed to be concerned that smaller churches might have a problem with the 10% floor area requirement. So they recommended taking that out. I think Mrs. Hughes' most recent suggestion sort of solves all those problems. It basically provides a safe harbor for people who meet the 10% requirement, and then that would be the end of the inquiry. You wouldn't have to have an individual determination, but it also leaves the door open for someone to come in and be analyzed individually and still meet that requirement. So I think that is a really good suggestion and the way to go. So we would recommend that the board adopt those most recent language suggestions. I'd also point out that the place where the church does this, it was originally approved for a daycare of about 200 kids. So instead of doing that, they're doing this so that the actual impacts in the area are much, much less than they would otherwise be. And so unless anybody has any questions, I will turn it over to the rest of our folks who will tell you about all the great things the clinic does.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Fred Wilson, the lawyer representing Rolling Hills at this time? Okay, go ahead, Shannon.
Next up is Sandy Kosick. Please unmute, state your name and residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Sandy Kosick from Boiling Free Clinic. I'm the executive director. I actually live in Malala. I just wanted to say that, first of all, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm a retired physician assistant, and before that, I was a public school teacher and school administrator. When I practiced medicine, I practiced over on the Oregon coast in rural communities in federally qualified health centers, in other nonprofit clinics. And I also had the opportunity to participate in 10 medical missions to Central America with various NGOs. And we worked in remote areas, desolate areas where people had no access to healthcare. And we hung curtains for our exam rooms. We sat in school desks to visit with our patients. But the reason I went into medicine was to work with the underserved. And that has been my passion all along. Like myself, many of our volunteer providers are retired. Some of them are still working, but they come to work for us because they want to work with this population. They enjoy the fact that they have adequate time to meet with their patients, take whatever amount of time they need to provide for their, not only their medical needs, but also their social needs. As you can imagine with this population, they have a lot of other issues going on. Food insecurities, housing is an issue. So we do what we need to do to treat the whole patient. In an example, we had Raul come to the clinic on Monday. Raul is from Venezuela. He was diagnosed with stomach cancer in May. He had surgery in Venezuela, and his doctors said, you need chemotherapy. There was no chemotherapy in Venezuela that Raul could access. So fortunately, he has a son here. So he was able to travel to the United States, and he came to us because he has no insurance. So we're going to do everything we can to help Raul to find the services he needs to hopefully save his life. And we see these kinds of patients all of the time. So can we provide care behind curtains like we are now, with a limited lab, no office space, very limited privacy? We have a lot of women who come for pap smears and their annual women's screening exams. And those are difficult exams to perform with no privacy. So yes, we can perform those services, but our patients deserve better. So I just want to thank you for your consideration and opportunity to speak, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, Sandy, this is Tootie Smith. I have a question for you. I assume, for instance, on your chemotherapy and your cancer diagnosis treatments, you refer those out, correct?
That is correct. We work with Project Access to refer our patients to specialty services.
And some of your more major medical situations, you would refer out to the appropriate place for people who are underserved?
Absolutely. We do urgent care, but anything more serious than that, we immediately send them to the emergency room.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher, she has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Sandy, for taking the time to be with us. I'm just curious about, land use is one area of regulations that you've had to deal with. I'm wondering what other ways your clinic is regulated.
So all of our providers have to go through what we call credentialing and privileging in order to practice medicine in our clinic. We provide malpractice coverage through the Federal Tort Claims Act. They have to go through the same rigor to volunteer in our clinic as any other place that they would be working at in their own medical practice. So we basically vet them, background checks for all our volunteers and so forth. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Is there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just interested, being faith-based, I was interested in what other types of regulations that you had to work through. But it seems like you have all the same regulations of having all the insurance and the credentialing and as any other nonprofit or for-profit medical facility.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sandy? Sandy, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is John Geffel. John, please unmute yourself, state your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
My name is John Geffel. I live in Oregon City, off Sprague Road, and I am also the pastor at Rolling Hills Community Church, the administrative pastor. I also serve on the elder team at Rolling Hills and also on the board at Borland Clinics. And what I'd like to speak to today, and I thank you again and echo the thanks that have been shared already by other speakers. I'd like to speak to how core this is to the Christian church and Christian churches in general, not just Rolling Hills. This could be, I guess, viewed as a Rolling Hills thing. It really is a Christian church thing, and also a broader religious issue. But the free exercise and practice of our faith is really central here, certainly central for Rolling Hills, and the expression of our faith, the expression even of worship, flows through the practice of caring for the least of these, caring for people who are in crisis, caring for people who are houseless or have severe issues in their life. And there's many ways that we try to step into that as churches to care for those who really have run out of places to go in many cases, and are at the end of their rope. The clinic and medical care, we see that as a holistic function, not just simply as important as it is providing really high quality professional health, but also to provide enough faith, a setting where people can be asked, would you like someone to pray with you, and have someone sit down and address them as a person that has spiritual needs as well as physical needs. Jesus in Matthew 25, he said, for I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. And I think that there's many, many verses I could cite, but that particular one is so meaningful and so central to what we're talking about today. The medical ministry was birthed out of a vision and an extension of our mission as a church. And our church is not, our mission as a church is not dissimilar from many other churches in the area. So we are very much in support of this great work that's been done here to provide this as a clear path for accessory use that would not just
Thank you.
allow Rolling Hills to proceed, but other churches in the area.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is Ora Olsemer. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please unmute yourself, state your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing my comments. My name is Ora Olsemer, and I have been a volunteer medical provider at the Borland Free Clinic since 2019. I am an emergency medicine physician assistant. I work clinically at Emmanuel, the emergency department, and I also work in academics as a professor at Pacific University in the School of Physician Assistant Studies. And I would like to support this proposal that would allow Borland Free Clinic to continue to provide the desperately needed medical services for the community. Specifically, the Borland Free Clinic provides acute care for acute illnesses. We manage chronic disease. We provide vaccinations, diabetic education services, assistance with medications, making needed referrals through Project Access. We have specialists like podiatry and physical therapy that come in and support and provide services. We have translation services for our patients, and it plays an important role to many of the underserved populations. Clackamas County actually ranks number 3 nationally in unhoused homeless individuals as of the point in time count of 2020. So the community desperately needs these services. The many volunteer doctors, nurses, PAs, medical assistants, medical scribes, translators, all give their time and expertise to meet the needs of this population and this community. And I'm so proud to work with this group of dedicated healthcare professionals. Even through the pandemic, we have remained open to provide services to patients, refilling prescriptions and seeing patients from all around the world. Beyond just providing care, though, the Borland Free Clinic offers and inspires future healthcare professionals. Many of our medical scribes, medical assistants aspire to pursue careers in nursing and medicine. Exposure to kind and compassionate healthcare providers is the foundation for their professional attitudes and a key to their success in the future. I have had the opportunity to have Pacific PA students shadow in clinic, and each goes away with a much deeper understanding of what it means to practice medicine and care for vulnerable populations. And they have an exposure to public health problems that they would normally not see. Students learn what it really means to care for people. In short, I support all policies that support this clinic and providing these much needed services for the community.
Thank you very much, Orla Ossomer. Shannon, who's up next?
Next up is Dawn Carter. Dawn, please unmute yourself, state your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, good morning. My name is Don Carter. I'm a resident of West Lynn and a tender at a member of Rolling Hills Community Church. I'm also an attorney with McEwen Gisvold in Portland and chair the Borland Free Clinic board. I'm involved with Borland Free Clinic because in surveying the community, the church found that an important unmet need was for medical care. This fits squarely within the mission of the church, as John Geffel has outlined from Matthew chapter 25. The clinic is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation organized under Oregon law, and it is also organized to meet the requirements to be recognized under the Federal Tort Claims Act. All of our volunteers are deemed under that act as though they were officers of the Public Health Service. That means that any malpractice coverage is provided by the federal government in recognition of our status as a deemed clinic under the Federal Tort Claims Act. Our models were the Salem Free Clinic and the Battleground Clinic. Both of those clinics are housed in church properties. The clinic is meeting the needs of the community. As just mentioned, the clinic stayed open during the pandemic with the support and encouragement of the Oregon Health Authority. We continue to meet the needs of those most in need in our community. We are the safety net for the safety net, and we are privileged to be able to provide care for those most in need in our community. I'm constantly amazed at the quality of the medical care that is provided, the passion of those who choose to volunteer at this clinic, and the gratitude of those who are served by it. Thank you for considering this important change to the Clackamas County Code, and I encourage and urge you to proceed with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shannon, who's up next?
Next up is Mike Garrison. Mike, please unmute yourself, state your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, Mike Garrison.
Mr. Garrison, can you unmute yourself?
Let's come back to him, Shannon. Yeah, and give him an opportunity to fix his technology.
Great. So next up is Zachary Gillick. Zachary, please unmute yourself, state your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Zach, and I am the pastor of community and global outreach at Rolling Hills, and I live in the Portland area. And really, I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to kind of just have this meeting and to discuss some of these things that are really important. My role exists because Rolling Hills, and really Christians at large, recognize that following in the footsteps of Jesus means that we see and care for people holistically. And for us, that means we recognize that human beings are a body, mind, and soul. And so, really, there's this importance, and really it's a necessity for us to care for people holistically, which means meeting people's spiritual needs, their mental needs, their physical needs. And I'm not going to claim I'm not a legal expert, so I'm just going to speak as a pastor and a committed follower of Christ. But these various ways that we meet people's needs, they're not some supplementary extracurricular activity, but these are essential acts of worship for us. And so at the heart of us helping to get this clinic going was a desire to follow in the footsteps of Jesus and care for people and meet needs that are the felt needs, these needs that people are displaying and asking for help. And so that I just want to kind of give that as just a quick kind of explanation of our heartbeat for why we exist as a church and why we were pushing hard to get this clinic going. Thank you.
Up next.
Mr. Garrison, we're going to try one more time. Can you unmute yourself? State your name and residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mike Garrison. I live in West Lynn. Apologies for the snafu a minute ago. It was 100% user error. I am a board member and vice president of the Borland Free Clinic. Professionally, I'm an attorney and executive at the Providence Health System. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the clinic's behalf this morning. A societal question for all of us is how to ensure that all people receive the right health care at the right time to live healthy lives. And we've learned that we need multiple venues for different types of care delivery in our communities. That makes care more accessible, more efficient, and less costly. Borland and other small clinics are a key component of the primary care delivery network. Almost by definition, our patients are the poor and vulnerable. They do not receive their care from the large systems. Barriers include lack of transportation, homelessness and mental health issues, and a lack of trust, especially in communities of color that have experienced historical racism in healthcare. For many of our patients, it really is a small clinic or nothing. Free clinics like Borland can provide basic primary care services efficiently for tasks that are critical, but which do not require the sophisticated and limited resources of hospitals, which are sometimes better reserved for emergent cases. In acknowledgement of this important role, the large health systems provide financial and other support to free clinics, including PPE, COVID tests and vaccine, clinical volunteers, and free or subsidized test processing, and that's been just during the pandemic. Places of worship, including Rolling Hills, are an ideal location for free clinics. As Pastor Geffel mentioned, healing is one of the original ministries of the Christian religious tradition. At Rolling Hills, the parishioners volunteer at the clinic and also with the church's other community outreach programs. In addition to receiving needed medical care, this synergy also helps Borland's patients fulfill other needs that are necessary to live a dignified life. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Ted Carlson, looks like you've raised your hand again.
He testified before, but he has his hands up. I'll go ahead and allow that. Maybe he has an addition or a correction. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you.
Again, a technical glitch. I lowered my hand, but no, I've said my piece. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ted. We just want to make sure. Is that everybody?
That is everyone on my list. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon, for that. We will now enter the discussion portion of this hearing. Does any commissioner wish to address any topic that was made? I'm going to go back to one of the people who were testifying. He was a lawyer, Fred Wilson, representative of the law group for Rolling Hills. He thinks that the 10% allowable space is too small. isn't that what I heard him say?
I don't believe so.
For smaller churches, that is his concern. They can meet the requirement for their church, but for other churches that aren't as large as this one, is that what I understood him to say?
I understood Fred Wilson to be in support of the amendments, including the 10% allowance. It's more than they would need for their particular situation, but it would provide more space for other churches that have facilities that are smaller, and therefore the percentage of their healthcare services that they would occupy would be greater than that. And he was underscoring that that 10% limit would not close the door on any place of worship pursuing approval for more than 10%. It provides a safe harbor and says, as long as you're doing these things, you're definitely accessory to a place of worship.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that, Glenn. Any other comments for commissioners on this?
Chair, I have one question.
Yeah, Commissioner Scholl.
On Action 7, implementation period for hospitals, public facilities, places of worship. Just to be clear, if we approve this, all conditional use permits must be implemented within 4 years, or they can request a 2-year extension for a total of 6. That's everybody.
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to convey my deepest gratitude for all of those at the Rolling Hills Church who testified today and others who have not testified for volunteering to help others. It's a great need out there, and it's much appreciated.
Commissioner Savas, I concur with you. In this time of COVID, and for some people, medical care and availability is very hard. This clinic can really step up and provide gaps in that. And these people are very dedicated, as we heard. We have over 120 emails in support of this. And I'm very moved by this. And I'm so thankful for staff that you took the extra time to develop this and move forward with this. I think kudos and congratulations on my part to you. I think that you really worked hard on this to get it into this particular action that this board is taking. I just can't say enough about that. With that in mind, I'll call for a motion.
I move to approve ZDO-280 as recommended by staff.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Scholl and seconded by Commissioner Savas that we approved ZDO-280 as made. Any further discussion?
Yes, Chair. Just one thing I forgot to ask.
Sure.
Mr. Carter, if you are still listening, I really appreciated your testimony. I was intrigued by the Federal Tort Claims Act provision that you cited, and I'm curious about learning more about that. If you could please contact me with where I can find that. My email is psavas@clackamas.us. I can think of another clinic. Maybe I want to make sure that they're aware of that provision, and also like to learn more about it myself. So thank you.
And maybe staff has his email for you, Paul. I don't know if you do.
I might. I
Glenn?
can take a look
Yeah.
for it.
That'd be great. Any other comments on this? Hearing none. Shannon, please take the poll.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much, commissioners. Now that the amendments have been approved, I will direct staff to draft an ordinance reflecting today's decision and include it on the agenda for this board's adoption at a future business meeting. Is this time sensitive at all, Nate?
Well, Glenn, I don't know. I mean, we get these on the board's agenda usually with about 2 weeks lead time.
Okay, that's fine, because you do know the board will be on break for 2 weeks, so it'll come up at our September 9th or 10th business meeting at the soonest.
Yeah, I'd have to check in to see if we have findings and an order ready, but.
Okay, that's
yeah.
fine. That will be okay for you. Well, thank you very much. I will now close the hearing on ZDO-280. Thank you, everybody.